It's 2 p.m. on Thursday, September 25th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. And these are the stories making headlines at this hour. President Park Geun-hye underlines her North Korea policy at the UN General Assembly and asks for global support in dealing with threats from Pyongyang. U.S. President Barack Obama reiterates his stance to destroy Islamic State militants, or the network of evil, as he puts it. This as an IS-related group beheads a French hostage. And Asia's largest sporting competition, the Asian Games, are underway in Incheon, right here in Korea. China leads the pack by a big margin, with Korea in second in the medal count. And let's begin in New York. Establishing an international peace park was on the mind of President Park Geun-hye when she addressed the UN General Assembly, and so was North Korea's human rights record. Our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun files this report from New York.
While urging Pyongyang to lay down its nuclear arms and to start looking after its people's livelihood, President Park also asked the world leaders for their cooperation in first tearing down non-political barriers between the two Koreas. In particular, she talked about her earlier proposal to build a peace park in the peninsula's demilitarized zone.
UN 주도하에 남북한, 미국, 중국 등 전쟁 당사자들이 참여하여 국제적인 규범과 가치를 존중하며 공원을 만든다면 그것은 한반도 긴장 완화와 평화 통일의 시금석이 될 것입니다.
The president then brought attention to human rights abuses that are prevalent inside North Korea.
또한 국제사회는 탈북민의 인권 문제에도 관심을 기울여야 합니다. 탈북민들이 자유의사에 따라 목적지를 선택할 수 있도록 UN 해당 기구와 관련 국가들이 필요한 지원을 제공해야 합니다.
The Korean president also called past and present wartime sex abuse on women a serious rights issue, thought to be an implicit reference to Japan's former enslavement of Korean women. She then promoted her envisioned trust-building process in Northeast Asia amid tensions over historical and territorial differences. Reflecting how far Korea has come since joining the UN 23 years ago, President Park also highlighted Seoul's contributions to various global issues such as sustainable development, climate change, and education. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, New York.
Meanwhile, North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly is set to meet for the second time this year today. Observers are keeping a close eye on what issues will top the agenda. Potential points of interest may be a change in the political power structure, such as appointing a new chief of military politics. Another focal point is whether Park Bong-ju stays on as prime minister and if General Choi Ryong-hae is granted more power after being appointed as vice chairman of the National Defense Commission following the execution of the North Korean leader's uncle Chang Song-taek. Now, what many are wondering the most, though, is whether Kim Jong-un, who's not been seen publicly in about 3 weeks, will make an appearance, as he is rumored to be suffering from a leg injury or poor health. Now let's shift back to the UN General Assembly. Topping the world's most pressing issues at this year's gathering is the threat of Islamic State extremists. U.S. President Barack Obama called for a united response before chairing the UN Security Council meeting. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details on Wednesday's developments in New York.
Facing the mounting threat from terrorist groups, U.S. President Barack Obama made it clear at the United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday that the U.S. will confront and dismantle Islamic terrorists. He urged nations to reject the cancer of violent extremism.
The only language understood by killers like this is the language of force. So the United States of America will work with a broad coalition to dismantle this network of death.
He went on to asking the world to join the effort.
And already over 40 nations have offered to join this coalition. Today I ask the world to join in this effort.
Following the UN meeting, the Security Council unanimously approved a resolution that calls on countries to adopt laws stating that joining a militant group like the Islamic State is a serious crime for their citizens. Over in Syria, US-led airstrikes continued to hit Islamic State positions on Wednesday. The U.S. Central Command said they pounded a dozen targets in Syria, such as small-scale oil refineries that have been providing millions of dollars a day to the terrorist group. But Islamic State fighters continue to make advances. They have intensified their attacks near the Turkish border in northern Syria, where 140,000 civilians have fled in recent days. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
And the IS militants aren't just posing a threat in Syria. A group linked to the extremist group in Algeria claims to have beheaded another Western hostage. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
It has been confirmed that French tourist Hervé Gourdel has been executed by a group in Algeria linked to the Islamic State forces. Gourdel was kidnapped earlier this week by fighters of the Jun al-Khilafah, or soldiers of the Caliphate, who threatened to kill him if France did not end its campaign against IS militants in Iraq. French President François Hollande condemned the brutality of Gourdel's death and vowed to continue his country's military operations against the IS.
Hervé Gourdel is dead because he was French, because his country. France is fighting terrorism. My determination is total, and this aggression only strengthens it. We will continue to fight terrorism everywhere against the Islamic State, which spreads death in Iraq and Syria.
The threat is also spreading to other countries. In the Philippines, an al-Qaeda elite militant group known as Abu Saif says it will kill 2 German hostages, first reported missing in April, unless Germany withdraws its support for U.S.-led airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. They are also asking for a ransom of more than $5.6 million. The Islamic State is also suspected of delivering a threatening letter to the presidential office of the Czech Republic in response to the nation's support for Kurdish forces in Iraq who are fighting the militant group. Local authorities are investigating the contents of the letter, which contained a white powdery substance. But unlike France and Germany, the Czech Republic is not one of the countries participating in airstrikes against the IS. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And speaking of the U.S.-led airstrikes, highly precise weapons are being used to attack Islamic State targets. We're talking about some of the world's most powerful and advanced missiles here. Now, Ji Myung-gil shows us the lineup of the U.S. military arsenal.
Tomahawk cruise missiles launched by the U.S. Navy from the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea signaled the start of airstrikes in Syria. They are typically used to hit large targets, delivering a bomb explosion after it lands, with little destruction to surrounding structures.
In the first wave of strikes, the USS Arleigh Burke in the Red Sea and the USS Philippine Sea in the northern Arabian Gulf launched more than 40 Tomahawk cruise missiles in eastern and northern Syria.
The F-22 Raptor, Pentagon's most advanced stealth fighter plane, made its combat debut in the sensitive Syria mission. The air combat version of a luxury vehicle, the jet carries air-to-ground missiles and guides bombs capable of precision hits from miles away. F-18 Super Hornet fighter jets, which were used in the Iraqi war, and Predator drones were also part of the U.S. airstrikes.
These strikes were taken as part of the President's comprehensive strategy to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL and to protect the United States and its partners.
The onslaught of U.S. warplanes against Islamic State strongholds and facilities clearly displays the American military's might in its campaign to bring down the network of enemy forces. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
The effects of falling share prices at the nation's 2 pillar companies are spilling into the Korean stock market. Shares of domestic companies other than those 2, however, appear to be on the rise. Our Connie Kim has more.
Poor performances from Korea's top 2 companies are reshaping the country's stock market. The share movement of Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor used to dictate the trend of the Korean bourse, but their influence has diminished recently, with many other companies moving in the other direction. Samsung and Hyundai peaked at a combined 25% of overall market capitalization in June, but the dramatic drops in their share prices in recent months have knocked their combined share value down to less than 16%. Roughly $60 billion have been wiped off the valuation of the two companies in the past year. In contrast, companies specializing in communications, textiles, apparel, banking, and other financial sectors have seen their prices go up by more than 20% in less than 3 months. This is partly because the Korean government began injecting $25 billion into the economy to spur domestic spending and accelerate a recovery. The poor performances from Samsung and Hyundai are being blamed on the strengthened Korean currency and other structural problems.
In the case of Samsung, the smartphone market worldwide has reached its saturation point, leading to a decrease in exports of Samsung handsets. Hyundai's recent purchase of land in Seoul for $10 billion has spurred worries of the company's cash flows.
Many component makers in the auto and electronics industries have seen their shares drop by more than 10% over the past 3 months. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Korea's leading messaging service, KakaoTalk, will launch its mobile banking service next month. The Financial Supervisory Service says the procedures for strengthening security standards will be completed by the end of this month and will be followed by final testing. The service, called Bank Wallet Kakao, will allow users to deposit about $500 into their virtual accounts and make transactions of up to about $100 a day. KakaoTalk has teamed up with 15 local banks to offer the service. Now, whatever a company's product may be, it's not an overstatement to say that the market they want to break into the most these days is the Chinese market. And as our Park Ji-won reports, one group that has paved its way into the lucrative market are Korean filmmakers.
A Wedding Invitation is a film co-produced by Korea and China, released last year. This romantic comedy made a huge splash in China, earning some $36 million, 10 times more than the film's production cost. The film's Korean director Oh Gi-hwan says he changed the film's scenario many times to make it appeal to Chinese viewers.
At first, I tried to remake my previous film, A Gift, but then I realized that the Chinese viewers didn't quite get some parts of the original script due to cultural differences. So I've rewritten almost everything with 3 Chinese scenario writers.
He says it's not easy to strike the right balance between both Korean and Chinese elements in one film, but says tapping into China's fast-growing market is certainly a risk worth taking.
There are forecasts that by 2017, the Chinese film market will be bigger than Hollywood, so it's a challenge that is worth trying.
China raked in some $3.6 billion in box office revenue last year, making it the world's second largest market, growing around 30% annually. And over the next decade, the gap between the Korean and Chinese movie markets will only grow larger. The two countries signed a groundbreaking film co-production pact in July that opened a door of opportunities for Korean filmmakers. But before then, it was difficult to break the wall of China's strict film import quota system.
Due to the film import quota, only about 70 foreign films got the chance to release in China, and half of those spots were taken by Hollywood films. That's why this co-production pact is important, because it helps Korean Chinese co-productions be recognized as homegrown films.
Another encouraging development for film creators from both countries is a joint investment fund worth nearly $200 million, which will be set up next year for co-production projects.
Both countries share a common goal of stimulating their content's markets through the active exchange facilitated by the joint fund.
The joint film projects are shaping up to be a win-win strategy, allowing seasoned Korean filmmakers to test their creations in a bigger market, while China can gain from Korea's production experience and expertise. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
We are well into day 6 of the action at the 2014 Incheon Asian Games, and Asian records and even some world records are being shattered. In archery, South Korea scored 238 points out of a possible 240 in the women's compound team quarterfinals match against Laos. Now making history were Seok Ji-yeon, Choi Bo-min, Kim Yoon-hee, and Yoon So-jung, beating the previous record of 236 set by the United States a decade ago. And now to a Korean swimmer who is pushing to break his own record. Park Tae-hwan has grabbed bronze medals in all 4 events he's competed in at these Asian Games. That adds up to 18 total medals from the 3 Asian Games he's taken part in, just 1 short of the Korean record. He may get his 19th tonight in the men's 100 meter freestyle, as he finished first in this event 4 years ago in Guangzhou and holds the Asian Games record. The 100 meter freestyle final is scheduled for 7:24 p.m. tonight, that's Korea time. Park qualified with the fastest time this morning, just 1 second off his previous record. Korean architecture has seen different trends over the year, but one architect has achieved the ability to create timeless works. Our Im Yoon-hee joins us for a look at this pioneer architect. Welcome to the program, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. So the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art here in Korea is starting a series where they're featuring leading contemporary artists here in the country. Now they decided to open the architecture sector of this series with the architect Kim Jong-sung, who is a foundational pillar of Korea's world of architecture. So take a look.
Be sharp angles and precise lines. They may look a bit cold and unfamiliar, but to its creator, it's art. That's because Kim Jong-sung is considered one of Korea's most brilliant architects. Each one of his creations undeniably a work of art, just not in the conventional sense. But how can something so formulaic, so black and white, so calculated, be considered art?
Science, technology, art are all together. I think the use of structure in both a technological way but in an artistic way is fundamental to architecture. And I think Professor Kim is a master at doing this. When you look at his work in the 70s and 80s, it's just spectacular today.
Over the past 50 years, Kim has been creating one-of-a-kind buildings found throughout the country, even abroad, each holding true to a stylistic trait where technology and art are interchangeable, resulting in a timeless masterpiece. Whether it be an iconic luxurious hotel or an office for thousands of workers, each building requires an exact calculation. So exact, it has to be an art. And to stick with his philosophy of creating a space where material, structure, and proportion are all equally as important as the ability to capture a sense of the natural, he's had to sometimes take rather unusual approaches. For example, a building in Korea used in the 1988 Olympics measures in at 60 meters by 80 meters, a huge expanse of a building. But back then, Kim didn't want people to be weaving in and out of support beams. So, to support such a large size, Kim had to turn to technology.
With the weightlifting gymnasium for the '88 Olympics, we had to use extensive calculations and technology to supporting the long-span structure of the building in order to allow for natural, wide, empty spaces. And with the Uyang Art Museum, I needed technology in order to anticipate all the natural factors such as sunlight, temperature, and humidity in order to control them for a comfortable building.
As timeless as Kim's pieces are, there are also landmarks in Korea's landscape, recognizable by the millions who encounter Seoul. His classic yet modern style is something many future generations of architects can refer to, while still being appreciated by the people of today.
So I'm curious to know, were you able to find out where he studied architecture?
So they do have a comprehensive, in-depth look at where he studied and who he studied with. So he's actually known to have studied with a very well-known architect, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. And so this is a German-American architect who's considered one of the most important architects to the 20th century. And so he was able to study under him and pick up on some of his stylistic traits, such as simplicity, such as the use of modern materials, which you do see in Kim's works. But at the same time, Kim was able to transform them into his own style.
And you did mention that it was a part of a new series created by the MMCA. So
the Contemporary Artist Series.
Right, so they are offering art pieces other than architecture as well.
They are offering looks at other artists, at other contemporary artists. So with this series, they want to shed light upon some other contemporary artists who are not as well known, but just as important to the contemporary art world here in Korea. And so they really want to preserve and share the history of contemporary art with the viewers, so people who may not know. And so with this, they are going to be showing different types of exhibitions, such as this architecture exhibition, as well as paintings and some sculpturists. And so you get a variety of different types of art.
Okay, and the exhibition that you went to was in Gwacheon, correct?
Yes, this one is in
there's another branch of the MMCA in Seoul?
So simultaneously, the Seoul branch is holding another architecture exhibition where they will be taking a very thorough, extensive look at architecture, not just one architect, but architecture as a whole in Korea. And so you're going to be seeing some very big buildings in Korea kind of broken down by where they came from, who created them, the stories behind them. And so this one is actually going to be looking at architecture with respect to time and the different events that happen in the country as well. And so another exciting event to go look at if you really are curious about architecture, especially here in the country. We have some very unique landmark pieces here.
Right. I mean, so whether it be Gwacheon or Seoul, it would be a good idea for a weekend outing perhaps.
Exactly. Some beautiful weather, nice architecture to check out.
Thank you very much, Yuni, for today's story.
You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The typhoon has passed and while the rain is gone, we still have some clouds hovering over the nation. However, those are moving out, which will eventually make way for a clear, bright, sunny day. And unlike yesterday, we have a good amount of sunshine with warmer daytime highs ranging in the low to high 20s, which is about 3 to 4 degrees higher than yesterday. But one thing to keep in mind is that we have large temperature gaps from the mornings and nights. Now, as for the weather conditions in Incheon, where the Asian Games are being held, we can expect a bright sunny day with temperatures making it up to 27 degrees while during the day and drops into the teens overnight. Now going over to our temperature readings for today, Seoul will peak at 28 degrees this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak at 28 and 26 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will get up to 25, while Dokdo hits 21, while Nangkeugang stays the same in the low 20s. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Hyun-kyung.
All right, thank you very much, Michelle. That brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more updates at 4 p.m. Korea time.